I tend to follow a very nocturnal sort of existence, mainly because I don't much care for sunlight. Bright colors of any kind depress me, in fact, and my moods are more or less inversely related to the clarity of the sky on any given day. Matter of fact, my private motto has always been that behind every silver lining there's a cloud. So I schedule my errands for as late an hour as possible, and I tend to emerge along with the bats and the raccoons at twilight.
Glenn was always very much a child in some ways. As well as that lonely, brooding prophet of the North, there was this merry, deeply funny, deeply sportive, and yes, indeed, deeply childlike man who just wanted to play and talk on the phone all night, and say, well, did you see the paper today? And just tell outrageously lame jokes.
Well, natuurlijk, I have been approached by the fans saying, this is fantastic, but I am convinced that my work, which is concerned with the resonance of silence, verstehen Sie?
He would take on an accent or particularly a sort of phony German accent, which he loved, and or he'd take on a New York accent, which I think probably represents his type of humor.
Yeah, well, I've never done too much great work type to translate, but my particular style tend to...
With him, it was always that sort of originality that he would tell his own joke, or he'd at least put it in his own way. He always used his own creative imagination in his humor. Now, a lot of people would probably say that was weird, and I think to some degree maybe it was, but you sort of put up with it, you accepted that as part of Glenn. It was part of him.
So it is incumbent upon always to put our very best.
And yet, no one, I was ahead of the list, no one would dare criticize that. They would say that was the funniest thing we ever heard, wasn't it? And if you didn't speak fast enough, he'd ask you, wasn't that hilarious? And you'd have to say, yes, it was. And if everyone he ever spoke to said, he would say, I'm unchallenged in my thinking. It must be right. Everyone agrees with me. These are really funny. And I guess no one ever dared touch reality in that case.
The German silence, which is of course organic, as opposed to French silence, which is ornamental. So my work can only be properly understood, seen in a proper perspective in the radio.
Thank you. We have speed. This is section 6, and it's take 1.
Would you believe a straight-through, all forces marshaled, no mistakes?
No mistakes, huh?
Anyway, we can do it better anyway.
Stop tape. Take 3.
Would you believe a straight-through, all forces marshaled, no mistakes take of the bar scene?
There was never any doubt when you were dealing with Glenn that you were playing with his rules, and to some extent that you were in his movie.
I love people.
And there was this incredible sense of vulnerability and genuine sweetness, but again, that sort of childlike or genius-like ruthlessness of knowing exactly what he wants and getting it, and if he doesn't get it from you, he'll find somebody else who he does get it from.
He not only wanted control, he insisted on control. He demanded it. I've often said, I think one of the reasons that Glenn probably never had, in terms of relationship, he never got married, because that required, really in a way, in a sense, that required giving up a certain control. It required that sort of commitment and that flexibility. And I think that Glenn really wasn't capable of that.
His relationships with the opposite sex were quite normal and quite fairly healthy, except if they got too involved. I think his first, he was, first of all, a workaholic. He really was. And devoted to his music. And then sometimes if relationships got too intense and too demanding, then he would end them.
I'm deeply in love with a certain beautiful girl. I asked her to marry me, but she turned me down. But I still love her more than anything in the world. And if I could only get her to tell me when I could see her, it would help. She has a standing invitation to let me take her anywhere she'd like to go anytime. But it seems to me she never has time for me. Please, if you see her, ask her to let me know when I can see her. And when
he was raised in such a way to hold back his feelings.
he was not able to express openly his feeling of love, lest his sexual needs and sexual strivings. He had the puritanical streak in him. And even though in the literature there are examples of something that may resemble intimacy, perhaps intimacy with some women and so on, in my opinion, given the facts that he was not able to express his feelings, I think the most that he could do was maybe have some platonic feelings for women, rather than to be engaged in full-fledged love relationship.
Oh, yes.
Glenn Gould was entertaining, charming, and brilliant. But he hid deep feelings of anxiety and fragility. He had individual friends, but not a tight circle of them. Outside the studio or recording sessions, he saw few people and went few places. He visited primarily by telephone, often long distance, mainly in the middle of the night. He needed the companionship missing in his daily life.
When I was 27, he wanted to get on the phone at midnight and tell me all about, you know, the tempos he'd chosen for this or that sonata and sing the whole sonata through to me. I thought that was cool, you know? I thought it was wonderful.
Or can you guess? That was always his opening line. It was never how are you or hello or something. His opening line was, can you guess who I got a letter from today? Or can you guess who I saw, you know, last night?
I used to have a little high sign with my wife. I would make my hands in this position, make a letter G, and I would go bing, bing, mean GG, and she would know as soon as I said hello, and I would go like this, she would know to go about her business for the next couple of hours if she had not yet gone to sleep.